What's up, my fellow developers? Welcome back to another video. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We did a simple AI detection between our AI and our player using a simple physics collider with a simple box collider. And this will actually be good enough for a lot of games, especially when it's combat focused, combat oriented. You don't have to worry about, the AI seeing you through a patrol or spotting you from a distance. Because one of the downfalls to this little system that we have here is that the player has to come within the bounds of our collider here. So let's say that you want the player to be detected from a distance. So you have to elongate this further out, across a long distance to be caught, and that's not really feasible when you have multiple AI. So a workaround for that, which is a little bit more intermediate rather, is using ray casting and distancing and things of that nature, along with some Lumberyard API using events. We can actually achieve a lot more complex interactions between AI, and we're going to get into that today. Real quick, we are moving on to 1,000 subs. We're getting very close. I think we're less than 30 away. So I would greatly appreciate it if you guys would sub if you haven't already. Share the videos. That's the best thing that you can do for this channel to help it grow. But let's get right into this tutorial. So first thing we want to do is delete this slider. Let's go to our guard under eyes. Actually, no, not eyes. Yeah, that might be new. So disregard that for now. I was doing some testing. So let's go to our character mesh. Nope. Oh, I'm tripping. It's under guard. So right here, this second one right here is the box. Yes. So let's go ahead and delete that. We don't need that. But what we will do is create another child entity. So right click on guard, create a child entity. And we're going to name it eyes, and you want to position it that the square is on the face of the AI, as you can see here. So it's almost as if we're using the eyes, because it's going to ray cast from the eyes. So if you have animations that have a head tilt or that looks left to right, this will be very beneficial. The best way to actually use that, if you want it to simulate that it's actually looking, is add an attachment component, and then you will go to wherever your character mesh is. For me, it's the character mesh under AI guard, and then you can actually hit a joint name, which would be like head, and if I do that, it'll go directly to the head, and then the Y forward is going to ray cast no matter if the head is turning left or right, looking up and down based off the animation. It's going to use that, which is a little bit more realistic. But we're going to keep it simple. We want to raycast from the front regardless of where the AI is looking. So let's go ahead and delete that. And it's actually going to stay there, but I'm going to fix the rotation. And there we have it. All right, from there, some more setup. As you guys can see, I did a little setup here on my on my world. I'm going to actually make this a little bit more visually pleasing. These are just stand-ins, like the trees. They are speed trees, but they were hand placed and not using the vegetation system that we have. So I'm going to actually fix that so that I can play with a few things. But yeah, so the next thing we want to do is go to our player, and we want to create a child entity here, and we're going to call this the tracking point. Now we're going to do this because I'm going to show you guys why, or I'll just tell you guys why. We're going to add a tracking point to the center of our player, because if we were to raycast to our player, what's going to happen is, as you can see here, the base of our player is at the feet. That's the origin. So if we were to raycast to the player and then we set the player as like the main target, it's going to track the base of the player right here. So if we were to move closer to the AI, the head point is actually going to rotate down the closer we get, because it's not looking at the center mass of our character, it's looking at the base of our character, and that's not realistic. So this is why we're creating a target point. So to make this usable for raycasting, we're going to add a physics shape collider. We're going to make it a trigger so that it doesn't collide with anything that's going to overlap, and we can do things that we need to do, but we're not going to use it for any of that. We just want it to be able to be hit by the raycast. So we want to get a box shape. Let's go ahead and minimize that. And we want to turn the... Oh, no, we're good. We're good. It's a shape collider. Sorry. We're just going to move it up to about right there. Yep, that's good enough right there. And that's all we need to do. Let's go ahead and save that. And as you guys can see, that I had also separated my my outliner with the layers. A good thing to do, get in the habit of doing, so you can have a good outline for your outliner, and that you don't have too many things just, you know, everywhere. So I have one for characters, navigation, environment, things of that nature. All right, let's get to the code. So we want to go to our AI, and our script canvas is player. Sorry, script canvas is AI guard with the target tag of player, and our anim ref is the character mesh. Let's open that up. Gonna bring that over. Now, as you can see, I deleted the code that we did have. It was only like one line, but I added the events for the navigation. So this right here, we're gonna delete this. We don't need this at all. For our events, we have on traversal started, in progress, complete, and canceled. And to find those, you just go over to AI, navigation, and you can see them all here. There are a few that I didn't use, but we will use those going later. Like there's one that's really important that we will use for creating a patrol AI, and that'll be another video. All right, so these to be our events here. So up here, instead of using the on trigger, we're going to use the on tick. Now, I preface this by saying, by saying you want to be very careful. It's not as important as it would have been, say, 5-10 years ago, but still running things off your tick can be expensive if you don't monitor it properly. If you just put everything on the tick, you can definitely drastically destroy the frame rates of your game. So we're going to be very careful how we use it and the amount that we use it. But since we're just making AI for this tutorial, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Just thought I would mention that. All right, so under timing, we have on tick. All right, now, so first things first, we want our raycast to run every frame so that we can always track where the player is. So let's go to physics. Under world, we want to raycast world space with group. All right, now we're going to create another variable, and we're going to call it AI eyes. All right, and we're going to make that in so that we can see it in the editor. So for our vector 3 start and direction, we want to get the world translation. Now you guys know the world translation is basically our position. So we're getting the position of our eyes, which for us was the child entity that we created for the AI. So we're just going to set this to the AI eyes. We're getting the world translation for that. And we also want to get the forward. So under transform, we're going to get the forward. That's going to also be for the AI eyes. All right, so let's go ahead and tie those in together. All right, and we're going to put that there. And we're going to get our forward to go. Sorry, I got set translation. That should be get. Sorry, get world translation. And they're going to start there. And we're going to get our forward, and we're going to direction. So we want to look forward. Wherever the forward direction is for the AI, whether it turns or not, we want to get that direction. So that's why we're using the forward. Our distance, we can set that as a number. we can just say distance, and we can set that to n, and we'll go here under number and we'll just set it to 500. That's a good number, and then we'll make that distance. We'll leave these two alone, our collision group, because we haven't set up our collision principles at all yet. So I'm going to leave this alone. And of course, the ignore, we want to ignore self. That's actually correct. So we're going to leave that alone. Let's tie this into here. Make sure we set that to eyes. And yeah, that's our basis. So now, so we'll know where we're looking. Let's go up to debug. And of course we have the console, but I like using the debug tools when they were added. I think 1.2324, I believe. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, these debug tools are very handy. So I want to draw a ray to entity, or draw a ray entity to another entity. So I want to set on out. It's going to be self to the entity that we hit. And I'm going to make the color red. I'm just going to put the number like 200 or something like that for it to stay on screen. All right, and that should, let's see if that works. So the eyes for the guard, we're going to set that here. This is 500. So if I hit play, see, there we go. Whoa. Don't know why I'm moving like that, but sure. Oh, hold on, let me see. Tracking point. Did I set it to trigger? I did not. That's why. There we go. There we go. All right. So you can see that the raycast is moving with me because he saw me, so I was in his line of sight already. So we're set. So let's go back to our script canvas. Now, another variable we're going to create is a Boolean, and we're going to call it can see. Sorry. Camel casing. All right, now there's another concept that we're going to use along with raycasting and distancing and using the events built into Lumberyard. We're also going to be using events. I guess you can call them the events for the variables. So if you were to drag out a variable and hit on can see changed, that will give us a event that we can track if the variable changed. And we're going to use this along with our raycasting so we can kind of track what's happening with the AI. So we're going to leave the draw entity here for now. It's going to get a little sloppy because of the way the lines work in script canvas, but that's okay. We can clean it up with functions and that kind of sort at another time. So first things first, I'm going to disconnect this first one here real quick. I'm going to move this down. We want to see if we hit an object first before we start doing anything. That way we can determine what the object was hit, or we can do things based off who was hit. I just like to include this just for different checks and whatnot. All right, so let's go down to logic. I'm gonna go to if, plug that in. All right, so if something was hit, we want to check to see, well, if something was hit, let's do it like that so we can have that set. Good. All right, so if something was hit, I'm gonna draw the entity to entity, and then we want to check to see if this entity has a tag of player before we do anything. So of course, has tag. All right, we want to get our CRC. All right, and let's make sure those two are tied together. And this is something that we would definitely want to wrap into a function because you will wind up using this a lot throughout your code. And since the function system inside of Lumberyard is global, once you create it once, you'll be able to use it in any of your script canvases, and that will save you from having to copy and paste this long line of nodes. Yeah, so we need the logic, another if. And we're going to have a string of target tag. Again, we're going to keep that there. So this is familiar because it's the same thing as the previous video was. So we're going to have that set there. We're going to move this up, and then we're going to make sure that the source that we're referring to is the entity that we hit. Now, To avoid all these lines, or to minimize it rather, what we can do is add another variable, and we're going to say current target. And we don't need to make that in because we're going to use it just for the graph. And we want to, in the middle of here, let's disconnect the source. We want to get current target. I'm going to set it. So if, actually no, sorry, wrong. That's not where I want it. Sorry, we want to see if this has the target. So we're going to have this line for now. If this is the target and it has the tag of whatever we want the tag to be, if that's true, then we're going to set the current target to this. So the only way to really minimize these lines are to wrap it into a function. But that should right there set our current target. Now we can use this at any point after this instead of having to draw or drag this, across all the way across the map. So we have our current target, and now we're going to grab our can see. We're going to set it, and we're going to set it to true. Now that we have that, what we want to do is use the event for the variable change to do our actions as far as like finding the target, because you can't really, like the AI navigation find path to entity, you can't run that off the tick. It's not going to allow you to. I believe that only can be called once, but the fact that it's on the on tick, it automatically disables it. So we're going to set the can see to true, and on the on variable change for can see, we're going to do what we're going to set up for a future video. So let's go ahead and grab this. We want to get it, and we want to check to see if it's true or false. So let's get a if here. All right, so basically seeing if get can see is true or false. We will do some debugging so that we can make sure that we can track everything. So we want to do draw text on screen. And I'm going to actually drag this down some. All right, so duplicate this. All right, so we're gonna have one for false, which won't trigger at all, but it just set us up for a future video. And then we'll have one for true. And this will say can see player. And we'll have that for green, and we'll set it to 255. And we'll leave it on screen for 2 seconds. All right. And under that says number, so in case you guys, this is the first time you guys seen the debug, the number for debug is basically the amount of time that it's left on screen. All right, now that we have that, so when it's set to true, all we want to do is go to our AI, and we want to grab our navigation, or I want to go under navigation rather, and get our find path to it. So let's go ahead and store that. And we want to have our source, and our target is going to be current target. All right, let's hit save. And that should give us our movement that we need. Now I did set up our AI with animations, very simple animations and that kind of thing. And before we hit play, let's go ahead and under the target tag, instead of hitting player, which is what we did in the last video, we want to change this to, I'm gonna say TP for target point. And under the player, our target point, because this is what's being hit, we want to give it a tag of TP. All right, so now if we hit play, you can see the AI is moving towards the player. Very cool. Now, since I did set up those animations, let's go ahead and actually get those moving. So you guys should already know how to set up an animation graph, especially if you've been following the channel for a little while. All that stuff is already on my channel. We want to go ahead and go to the events down below, and on traversal started, traversal started, we want to start our animation here. And for on traversal complete, we want to stop it there and then do some other logic as well. So what we can do, and we're going to keep it simple as always, let's go to our animation, our anim graph, and we want to scroll down, and you want to see, or you want to look for set name parameter float. All right. So I know, since I set it up, that I set my float movement, I believe, to set it to move forward. So move forward. I'm just gonna set this to 1. All right, and when we get to traversal complete, we want to get that same one. I could have copied it, but we're gonna get that same one and move forward and set it back to 0. Now, when we have at complete, I also set a little simple attack. So we can set it to our back to idle. We can give it a small delay. And to achieve this, all you have to do is make sure you set up movement nodes in your animation graph, as well as one node for an attack that has a parameter of attack, or whatever you want to name it. So I'm going to go delay. And I'm going to delay a half a second. And then I'm going to go over here and look for set name parameter bool, because I made it a bool for the attack. Now, in a actual production or whatever the case, you will want to disable this bool through a motion event. Anim notify if you're from Unreal, or a animation notify from Unity. But I don't have that set up, so I'm going to use another float to disable it, or another delay to disable it, sorry. So let's tie this in, and I call the parameter attack. I'm going to set it to true. I'm going to take this, duplicate it with Control D. I'm going to just wait like 0.2, because I already have it set to go back to false in the animation after the animation is done. So once they see the false on the Boolean, it'll just wait till the animation finishes out, and then it will go back to idle. All right, so we're gonna copy that and just set it to false. All right, so now with that, we have our on traversal complete. We're setting our idle, our movement back to idle. We're waiting a little bit of a delay, and then we're attacking, and then we're setting that Boolean for the attack back to false. And for traversal started, we're just setting our move forward to 1, so that we can have our animation for the AI when it moves. And this right here is a little bit more intermediate AI to get your AI to see the player and to act on it. So let's go ahead and make sure you save that. Okay, so I forgot one more step. So because the AI, the way I have it set up, that it's a child entity of the main entity for the character mesh, when we're doing the animation, make sure that it's not set to self, but it's set to the animation ref. So let's go ahead, and I don't know why it does that sometimes, but we're going to set that to animation ref. And the same thing for these two. And of course it did it. Of course it did. All right, so make sure you have those set, and of course this one. Oh, that one didn't mess up. All right, so now that we have those set, if we save, now you can see that we have animation. It's running, and when it gets to me, it should do an attack. Now it's kind of far away, and that's because our arrival distance on our guard is set to 0.5. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So that's a little bit too far away still. But we can adjust that with the arrival distance to be closer, or whatever the case, or further away if you're doing a range attack. But yeah, you guys get the gist of it. Raycasting is a very common feature, so I'm hoping that you guys find use for it with the AI. But yeah, hope you guys are having a very dope day. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know down below. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow and join the Discord. all those good things. Follow me on social media if you want. Hope you guys are prospering in your projects. Hope you guys had a great weekend. But other than that, I will catch you guys later. And always remember, keep developing.